Hey, how's it going, everybody? Coach Kyle here, and I want to talk about a super common question I get from almost every client of mine who has access to a treadmill, especially when it starts to get colder outside or warmer outside if I'm coaching somebody in Florida or Texas. And it's how to manage, how to deal with the differences between what your watch says, what your level of perceived exertion is, and what the treadmill machine actually tells you you're doing for speed and distance. And I just wrapped up a workout. I did 8 miles, the middle 3 at a marathon pace, so like 6:50 to 7 minutes per mile. And so I've basically got 3 different ways to judge the workout, and I have my heart rate monitor on, so technically I have 4. But it's perceived exertion. How hard does the run feel in my head? I've got my watch. The accelerometer tells me, has an indoor option. It tells me how fast the watch thinks I'm running, and I have the console on the treadmill, and it tells me how fast the treadmill thinks I'm moving. And I have calibrated this, so what I measured it. So what I did is you can measure the belt distance, put a piece of tape on it, and then turn it on. Count how many times it goes around. You can calibrate. You can calculate how far the belt moved. And this this machine surprisingly turned out to be pretty accurate. I never would have bet that. So I trust my treadmill machine. I tested it at slow and fast speeds, and it came out pretty close. So my watch, on the other hand, this was very interesting. I only did this for the first time recently. The watch, when I'm running like an easy warm-up pace, which normally outside would be like we'll say 8:45 to 9 minutes per mile. The watch inside has me running, let me think, faster than what the treadmill has. So if I put the treadmill on at a 10-minute per mile, the watch has me running about, I think it was about 15 to 30 seconds per mile faster than what the treadmill's actually doing. But when I crank it up to marathon speed, 7 minutes per mile is an 8.6 mile per hour, the treadmill has me running slower. So that was surprising. And it says it's supposed to learn based on your movements on the treadmill and your movements outside, and it kind of syncs what you're doing inside with outside. But I trust the machine here. Plus, if I were to try to get this up to a 7-minute mile, there's no way, out of the question. But I can do it outside. Like I just did it. I did a workout recently outside, so I can do it. But so when it comes to this, I kind of trust the machine. I'm gonna go with what the machine says. If you don't know, like if you're just going to the gym and running, and that's what most of my clients do, is they have access to a gym. So what I recommend to them is kind of go by perceived exertion, maybe heart rate. If you use your heart rate monitor outside, you can run by heart rate on the treadmill. Perceived exertion is how hard you feel the run is, and there's so many factors. I'm a big fan of perceived exertion, but there are so many factors that come into play to affect it. For example, things not moving by you on the treadmill makes it feel harder because nothing is moving by you. Again, if you're outside at night in the dark, you don't have things moving by you, and that can kind of mess with your perceived exertion as well. But if you're in a gym by yourself, like I am in my office here by myself, nobody's around, so that's kind of that baseline perceived exertion. But as you know, in a group run, in a race, or if there's somebody next to you on the treadmill, your perceived exertion will be down, so you will be able to run faster at a lower perceived exertion. That's why people hit the wall during long distance events, because they get carried away because the first third of the distance feels amazingly easy at too fast a speed because there's a bunch of people around them. So don't, be wary of how everything goes, but log it however you want to log it. When I'm going to write this in my journal, I'm going to use my treadmill speeds, because I'm fairly confident in the distance and the speed. But don't stress about it. Figure out what will work best for your logging system when you're on the machine. I usually recommend running by perceived exertion, playing with that a little bit against what the treadmill actually says. And it's nice to run on the same, if you can, run on the same treadmill. So then you can compare run to run on the same machine. Now, this one versus the other 4 next to it at the gym, they all could be a little bit different in regards to the calibration. But if you can manage to run on the same treadmill for your workouts, so because it's nice to compare, okay, I did this pace for the mile repeats, this pace for the tempo runs over the last 3 months during the winter. It's nice to compare that, where at least that you're on the same treadmill, and you can compare the distances and durations from the same treadmill over time. So if you can do that, that's really helpful. But if you have any thoughts, questions, comments about running on the treadmill, frustrations with your watch versus the machine versus your heart rate versus the perceived exertion, drop them below. It's really interesting to read and hear what other people have to say. And as always, you keep running, I'll keep coaching.